Hello, I'm Heather Cameron, and it's my pleasure to host this segment of the Marin Women's Hall of Fame show. It's hard to imagine Marin County without the work of countless women shaping the life, culture, mores, and landscape of Marin County. From a Frank Lloyd Wright designed civic center to high-quality public schools, artworks downtown in San Rafael, vast areas of open space, innovative businesses, and a robust network of nonprofits, women have put their mark on Marin County. And Marin women's contributions go beyond our county. Honorees have been in space to the Arctic, created social-changing films, served in the U.S. Senate, and helped integrate holistic medicine with Western medical practices. Since 1987, the Hall of Fame has inducted over 125 Marin women of distinction, and today it is my pleasure to introduce Bettie Hodges, who was inducted in 2014 for her work as a community activist. Welcome, Bettie.
Hi, glad
It's such
to
a
be
pleasure.
Here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and congratulations again on your induction into the Marin Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much. I'm so proud of it.
Yes, and as well you should be. Bettie, over the next little while, we're going to have a chance, I hope, to talk more about some of your many accomplishments. But before we do that, it would be so interesting if you would share some of your early experiences as a child in Marin City and growing up in your family. The masterwork, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, describes the decades-long migration of black citizens who fled the Jim Crow South to western and northern cities in pursuit of a better life. And I know your parents were part of that great migration. Can you share with us how their experience affected you as a child, or some of the choices that you made in your own life?
Sure. My family's from Mississippi. My father had worked in steel mills in Alabama, in Mobile, Alabama, when he saw a flyer that said there are jobs in Marin County building ships, Liberty ships. And so he and a friend boarded a train and came to California. And later he brought my mom. And lots of, when I think about the Great Migration, what I think about is that it's probably like 80 years after slavery. And so there had been an earlier migration of blacks from the South in the 20s. And so this was, coming right after the Great Depression. And so the whole notion of opportunity economic opportunity as well as social opportunity was, I think, the motivation for my family and for lots of other families. And so we grew up in Marin City with a whole community of people who had fled the South. Marin City was the first wartime housing project, integrated housing project in the whole nation. So everything about my family coming from the South to Marin City impacted my entire life. It continues to impact my life.
Were there some particular choices you made about going into the kind of work that you've done your whole life that was affected by the experience of being in this kind of community?
Because Marin City was a temporary wartime housing project and was supposed to be torn down at the end of the war, and residents had to mobilize and organize to have it rebuilt, to set up a redevelopment agency, and then it took an additional 40 years for it to be redeveloped. Yeah, my whole life has been about the struggle of Black people to kind of find a place in the Bay Area community.
So this idea that people can band together to affect social change was a powerful example you had as a child, seeing that.
Everybody in the community was engaged in the fight to save Marin City. And so there were, people used to meet at my house. My mother was a part of the Communist Party. My father was in the labor union with Harry Bridges. And so I was just, activism and engagement and fighting for the rights of the underserved was what I grew up with.
You went to Berkeley as an undergraduate, and then you did graduate work there.
Berkeley was an amazing experience for me. I started at Lewis and Clark in Oregon, and I felt kind of out of place there. I felt I was missing something, so I came back to Berkeley and majored in political science and history, and just met some incredible individuals. One day, I was coming from a class and got invited to lunch with Fannie Lou Hamer. Another day, I was walking in the student union, and Martin Luther King was having a meeting on the steps of the ASUC, talking to Black students about guns and violence in the civil rights movement. So, yeah, I feel like I was raised at an exciting time and went to school at an exciting time.
Sounds like you went to Berkeley at probably the best time ever in terms of things that were going on in the country and the world, and so much of it was happening at a campus like Berkeley. You got involved at that time in the Marin City Community Development Corporation. What was your role in that organization?
Well, Marin City Community Development Corporation came way after Berkeley, but it was influenced by Berkeley. I had been a teacher, a librarian, came back to the community, had planned to move to Mississippi to write children's books. That's what I still hope to do one day. And but again, the whole thought of the community being threatened, it was at a time where the thought was that a Kmart was going to be built on vacant land in Marin City, plus the redevelopment hadn't fully occurred. And so some friends and I began to talk, and we decided to run for office. We ran for office, got elected, and then in that process began to investigate the whole notion of community development corporations and using that tool as a tool that grassroots people could control development. And so that's what we did.
And was that sort of, did that have sort of a big effect on you, sort of getting involved and seeing that you could have an effect on creating an organization like that? Did that sort of steer you in a different direction from the one you might have planned as a writer and teacher?
What changed the direction was a friend that originally talked me into running for office, George Rocky Graham, was killed. And he was killed by our political foes. And so his death and our commitment to trying to make a change in the community is what really made me decide to stay and try to see the redevelopment of Marin City through.
My goodness. You had an opportunity to go to Washington and to Boston sometime after this. You won prestigious fellowships to MIT and to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. What was that like? Was that your first experience spending a lot of time in the East Coast? Was there some sort of was that sort of a moment in your life that was a change moment?
It was a change moment. My friend Chuck Collins told me I needed an East Coast experience. And I'm like, what do you mean an East Coast experience? I'm perfectly happy doing what we were doing. The CDC had started and we were in the process of trying to select developers and that kind of thing. But he convinced me that, you know, the fellowship at MIT, a planning fellowship would be a good experience, and I did that. And after that, I became interested in Washington, D.C., and got a fellowship with the Congressional Black Caucus. And so, yeah, it was a major change in my life, just to be in the seat of power, see how things happened and what could happen in Washington and what couldn't happen in Washington. I think based on my experience there, I became really committed to the local level. I felt like if change is really going to occur, there's all this stuff you have to go through in Washington, but at the local level, you have a chance to make some things happen. And so then I wanted to come back and kind of complete what we had started to do.
So you weren't disillusioned with the political process, but it had the effect of reinforcing the value of grassroots change or working at the local level? Was it that you felt you could have a greater impact locally?
I felt like I could have a greater impact locally, and I guess there was a moment, I was there when, actually I was sitting in a house gallery when Ron Dellums, who had been trying to get sanctions against South Africa through the Congress, actually got attached to a bill and was passed. And I realized that it had taken him like 5 or 6 years of effort in the Congress to try to make that happen, and all of the various constraints at the congressional level. So not disillusioned with it, but just feeling like where I felt like I could be most effective was at the local level. And I'm still very much committed to that, and you know, grassroots organizing and that kind of thing.
So this was in the late 80s when you were in Washington, is that
That's
right?
correct.
And you came back?
Yes.
And you came back to Marin City?
I came back to Marin City. Well, what happened was I was actually asked by some pastors if I would apply for a job at the newly formed Marin Community Foundation. So I was away when all of the lawsuit and all the litigation was happening, but I had kind of followed it, and they said, you know, we really would like someone that could represent the interests of low-income people. We think you might do that. Will you apply for the job? So I actually applied for the job while I was there and got it, and you know, basically came back. I landed on a Tuesday and was at work on a Wednesday. So I just kind of popped into that.
And so that was also an amazing time for the Marin Community Foundation, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And what sort of, can you talk a little bit about the impact you felt you were able to have in the community by being in a position to sort of basically pick the projects that would be supported financially by the Community Foundation?
It wasn't quite like that. I mean, in the area that I was in housing and community development, I first had to convince the Marin Community Foundation Board that we can make an impact in housing, because housing costs millions of dollars to develop. And so they were like, well, what can we do in housing, and how can we be effective? So I had to do quite a bit of work with housing advocates around the Bay Area to help me put together a case that we could make, we could affect change in housing. There was no grassroots organizing group in this county. So we had to work with the community to try to create a grassroots group. So it wasn't simply when I was at the Marin Community Foundation that I was picking projects. Sometimes I was trying to help create projects so that there could be an infrastructure in the county to support change work. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does make great sense. Did you feel that through your work at the Community Foundation you were able to help the creation of a strong infrastructure in Marin City?
I hope so. Marin City was tough. I mean, I think that we tried to create an infrastructure in Marin City, and that infrastructure was a little bit different than what we're trying to do with housing. In Marin City, we were trying to create a kind of social service and economic development network. And I think we were best at the economic development network that we were able to support through the Marin City CDC and other, and the Marin City Community Land Trust and those things. But the social service network was a little bit harder, and truth be told, the community is just beginning to create the level of social service network that really is appropriate for that community.
So tell us about the Hannah Project. Now, did that grow out of your work at the Community Foundation, or was it inspired by some of the work that you're doing at the Community Foundation?
Hannah, I left.
And why Hannah?
Okay. So here's the Hannah story. I left Community Foundation in 2000. And after, Hamilton, and after some trying to get Housing Trust Fund developed and the Thriving Families Initiative developed. So I just kind of set some targets for myself. So I wanted to help create this infrastructure. I did, it was done. I left, I became a consultant. And so Hannah was a volunteer effort. I was working at my church to give scholarships to kids. I kept seeing that there weren't a whole lot of kids going to college. So started talking to parents. Parents said, they didn't know how to help their kids go to college. So we just pulled together some people and began doing it as a volunteer effort. And the more that we got involved with it, the more that we understood the complexities of the problem. I thought it was a question of just simply giving people information about college, but it really had to do with helping bridge the achievement gap and some other things. The Hannah name came from the fact that at the time, at a particular time, I was asked to do a prayer workshop, and I was doing the workshop about effective prayer, and I focused on this woman, Hannah, in the Bible, who was barren, but who had prayed to God and had been seen by the prophet Eli, and he told her, if you go and you lay with your husband, you will have a child. And then she said, I will dedicate that child back to God. And so she did. And that was the prophet Samuel. And so what I felt like the Hannah Project was about was to take kids, prepare them, and then give them to the world for their purpose. And so that's why we called it the Hannah Project.
Has this been it sounds to me from the way you're talking about it, this has been an act of work of joy, working with kids. But tell us about some of the challenges that you've encountered.
I think, I had such a great education in both in Marin City, at Tamalpais High School, and then at Cal, at MIT, even took classes at Harvard. So I've really felt like I've had a good education. So I was distraught, and distraught is the real term, when I was doing my consultancy and I saw what was going on with kids in Marin City in schools. The failure rates, the graduation rates were not acceptable. And so that's why I do the work. And so we're still challenged. I think that Parent engagement is a challenge, getting parents involved with their kids, getting schools to understand the importance of cultural competency and working with kids from different racial and socioeconomic backgrounds. There's a whole range of problems that we're trying to address with the Hannah Project, and others in the county are trying to address with the various educational networks that we have to support kids.
And I understand that in addition to providing support for kids going to college, there's a whole cultural enrichment program and reading and literacy enrichment programs that you're also involved with. Are those all part of the Hannah Project?
Yeah, we have about 5 programs. So we have a Freedom School. We work with kids that are in 3rd to 5th grade. It's a Children's Defense Fund sponsored project. Oh, okay. And so it's all about reading, literacy, language arts development, performance. So it's a full day program, 6 weeks during the summer for about 50 kids. We work with the middle school. We go into classrooms. We have something called the College Bound Brotherhood, which works with Black and brown boys to help them get in college. We have something called Success 101, which is a Saturday program, and then we have a scholarship program, and we're really proud of all of those programs, and they're designed to work together to be kind of stepping stones to help kids get into college, graduate, and to succeed. So we follow kids all the way to college graduation.
Of all of the wonderful projects that you're involved with or founded or started, are there a few things that give you the greatest pride?
Sure. I mean, it's amazing to work with someone from, say, 7th grade and then see them graduate from college and move into their kind of professional careers. So those moments are really great. To think about the work that we did to try to get the shopping center developed, to get the housing developed in Marin City brings, some sense of pride. And not just in Marin City. I've worked, in other places in the country, in Mississippi Delta, with the Mississippi Blues Festival, and so there's a lot of places where we've done some work that I'm proud of.
Do you have a sense of optimism about Marin City or about the communities that have had many challenges to overcome? Do you feel a sense of optimism going forward?
I have a sense of faith. And that's real different than optimism. I mean, if I were to look at the circumstances that we're facing, if I were to look at the politics, the resources, the various barriers, I call it the dark ages. We're really in a dark place. But I have a sense of faith. I do believe that that faith wins, and so I'm a very faithful person. I wouldn't say optimistic, I'd say faithful.
Faithful, constant.
Yeah.
Yes. You work not only with, obviously, with young women and girls, but young men and boys. But if you had some advice for young people or for young women, what advice would you give them about choices to make in their lives and how to live their lives? What I'd say, I think, is just be mindful of the balance in your life. Everywhere I see women busy, they're busy everywhere. And what I'm only now learning is that it's really important to give yourself time for pause and time for reflection, and to really take care of yourself and to take care of your spirit. Because I worry about women burning out. I worry about them not being healthy and taking care of themselves. And so that's what I would most try to impart to young women, that balance, and really making sure you have a spiritual place. Whatever that spiritual, however you think about spirit, make sure you have a spiritual place, because that's the thing that nurtures you and replenishes you. what's next for Bettie Ruth Hodges?
Well, I'm still in the trenches. I mean, that was the odd thing about getting the Hall of Fame. It's like I'm not at the end of my career. I'm still, we have this Hannah project. We've expanded into arts and culture. So we have a gallery. We have Second Friday Jazz. In fact, we have that happening tonight. We have a gospel cafe. So we're trying to build relationships with the canal so that we can bring the Black and Brown community together around arts and culture. I'm very interested in racial dynamics in the community as a whole, and racial dynamics in the school districts in Marin County, and looking at alternative strategies to bridge the achievement gap besides the ones that we're doing, more cultural, social strategies. So yeah, I'm busy.
You're very busy, and you have a lot more good work to do in the world. That's very clear.
Okay.
Thank you, Bettie.
Thank you
very much for sharing your incredible life. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. The Marin Women's Hall of Fame is a project of the YWCA of San Francisco and Marin. If you would like to learn more about the Hall of Fame and our honorees, please visit www.ywcasf-marin.org.
Okay, thanks.